Maybe you can still hear it, not now, but at some quiet moment in your day, that slight sound, almost imperceptible, of paws walking around the house, as if he were still there, as if it never left. And the strangest thing, it's just that for a second, you believe it. You stop. Look around, and you feel something that is difficult to explain. Today, this video is about that, about these moments that seem small, but that deeply affect anyone who has ever lost a dog. If you've ever felt this, hearing something, remembering a habit, or simply having the feeling that it's still there, then what you see here could completely change the way you understand that experience. Because here, you will not find cold answers, nor empty explanations. You will find something different, one way to understand these signs, without ignoring what you feel. Throughout this video, I'll show you 7 ways your pet may still be trying to communicate with you, even after they're gone. But more than that, you will begin to notice things that may already be happening in your life, and that you never had the courage to interpret in any other way. Simple things, from day to day. But, when seen with different eyes, take on a completely different meaning, and maybe more comforting. Because losing a dog is not just losing an animal, it's losing a constant presence, someone who followed you around the house, who knew when you arrived, that stayed there, even when you didn't say anything. And when he goes, it's not just the physical space that remains empty. It's the sound, it's the routine, it's that strange silence that seems too heavy. And it is precisely in this silence that many people begin to notice something unexpected, something that wasn't there before. Or maybe it always has been. But now, it's easier to feel. Let me ask you something, and answer honestly, even if it's just for you. Do you ever get the feeling that he's still around, even after everything? If the answer is yes, stay with me until the end. Because what you'll discover here may not just validate how you feel, but also bring a new way of seeing this connection. A way that does not end with goodbye. Now pay attention to this. Not all signs are obvious. In fact, most of them happen silently, almost like a whisper, and that's exactly why that many people ignore. But after today, you may never ignore it again. Because the first sign, it doesn't start out. It starts within you. After a dog is gone, the pain doesn't always arrive the way people imagine. Sometimes it doesn't come as an immediate cry. Sometimes it appears in the middle of the most ordinary things, when opening the front door. On the impulse to look down, as if he were still there. That second when you enter, and almost expect to see the tail wagging, the body restless, the eyes lit up as if saying without words, "You're back." And perhaps that is precisely what hurts the most. It's not just his absence. It is the permanence of the habit. Your body still remembers. Your routine still remembers. The house still remembers. Maybe he always waited for you at the door. Maybe he knew the exact sound of your steps, the sound of the key, the way you pushed the gate or turned the handle. And for a long time, this meeting seemed so normal that you didn't even realize how much it supported your day. Until one day, you enter, and no one comes. And yet, inside, some part of you continues to wait. That's why grieving for a dog is so silent and so deep at the same time. Because it didn't just take up one space. He occupied breaks, little moments, details that stitched together your life without making any noise. He followed you around the house. I would follow you even in the simplest moments. If you got up to drink water, he would go. If you changed rooms, he watched. If you sat down, he would often lie down nearby, without asking for anything. I just wanted to be where you were. And now, perhaps there is a strangeness that is difficult to explain even in this. You go to another room, and you miss that presence behind you, that soft sound of paws on the floor, that feeling of never being completely alone. There are people who try to move forward by pretending that this is an exaggeration, but it's not. Because anyone who has experienced this type of bond knows it wasn't just company. It was such a constant form of love that it became part of the environment. And maybe there is one part of the house that still looks different. The place where he slept, the walk, the carpet, the corner of the room, the edge of your bed. Maybe everything is in place, but at the same time, nothing is the same. Because some voids don't scream, they stay there, quiet, waiting for someone to admit that they still hurt. And this video is also about that, about recognizing that longing is not just in great memories. She is in everyday life, on the plate that moved out of place, at tour time, at the time he usually should appear, in the reflex of looking for him without realizing it. And when the house continues to wait with you, how can you pretend that this bond is completely over? Many people who have lost a dog carry hidden guilt for feeling too much, as if suffering like this for an animal was something that needed to be diminished. But the truth is different. When a dog truly enters someone's life, he witnesses phases that almost no one sees. Good days, bad days, moments of solitude, changes, infighting. He was there when no one else was. And maybe that's why, after he leaves, the silence in the house doesn't just seem like silence. It feels like absence with memory. It feels like a space that still retains something. And it's at this point that a lot of people start to notice little experiences that they can't quite explain. Not as proof, not as a spectacle, but as a feeling. As if love leaves traces. As if the connection between you hadn't disappeared at the same moment his body was gone. If this also happened to you, write your dog's name in the comments. Sometimes, saying his name out loud, or leaving that name on record, is a way of remembering that a bond like that doesn't pass through life without leaving marks. Because some presences disappear from view, but they don't leave the routine of the heart. And that's exactly where the first signs begin to appear. The first signs almost never arrive in a dramatic way. They don't come in the door making noise. They appear in the common, in detail, in the kind of moment that a lot of people try to forget quickly. Because deep down, it moves too much. The first sign is usually precisely this: sounds that seem too familiar to be just chance. It can happen in the early morning. It can happen when the house is quiet. It may happen at the time when he used to move the most. You're standing still, doing something simple, and suddenly you hear a noise that your heart recognizes before your mind. A light touch on the floor, a sound in the hallway, a quick impression of footsteps around the house. It's not always high, it almost never is. It's subtle. But for anyone who has lived with a dog for a long time, certain sounds are recorded very deeply. The body recognizes before logic. And maybe that's why, in those moments, you don't think first. You feel it first. You turn your face away. You hold your breath, and for a second, everything inside you reacts as if he were there again. Many people ignore this at the same time. She tells herself it was the wood of the house, the wind, an object settling, anything. And sometimes it can be. But the impact doesn't always come from the sound itself. Sometimes what makes the impression is what the sound awakens, because it doesn't seem random. He seems familiar. He seems to come loaded with presence. As if for an instant the environment repeated a living memory. And this is the point that touches so many people. Some sounds don't just seem like memories. They look like visitors. Now pay attention, because the second sign usually comes alongside the first. After the sound comes the unexpected feeling of presence. You don't see anything. Maybe there is nothing visible to show the other person, but you feel it. It's that impression that you're not alone in a room where you used to be. It's passing by a place in the house and having the clear feeling that there is someone there with you. It's sitting on the sofa and for a moment noticing that same atmosphere as when he used to lie nearby. It's looking at the corner where he slept and feeling something difficult to explain, as if that space still held more than a memory. These experiences tend to stir because they happen in common scenes. You are not trying to create a spiritual moment. You are not looking to feel. Most of the time, he is distracted, living the day, washing dishes, storing clothes, entering the room. And that's exactly where it happens, like a silent touch in the room, as a reminder that some connections don't fade as quickly as the world expects them to. There is something very human about this. When we live with a dog for so long, our mind, our body, and our routine learn its presence. But there are times when it seems to go beyond automatic memory. Because the feeling doesn't just come as longing, it comes as closeness, as if his absence wasn't complete, as if a part of the bond was still circulating around the house, looking for a delicate way to be perceived. And this creates an internal conflict that many people know well. On the one hand, you try to convince yourself that it's just a lack, just a habit, just a lie. On the other hand, there is a deeper part of you saying, it wasn't just that. And when the sensation is so real that your heart reacts before your reason, can everything really be explained just as a memory? Perhaps the most important thing here is not to rush to give it an exact name. Perhaps the most important thing is not to dismiss what you felt. Because I saw true circles leave marks in space, in routine, and within us. And when this love was deep, it is not strange that the first signs appear precisely where the coexistence was most vivid, in the sound of the house, and in its silence. If something similar has happened to you, keep it in your heart as we continue. Because the next signs get even more intimate. And some of them arrive when the mind finally lets its guard down. After the sounds, after the feeling of presence, there is a moment when everything becomes even more personal. Because some signals don't happen in the environment. They happen within your own experience. The third sign tends to appear when you least expect it, in dreams. But these are not ordinary dreams. They are not those fragmented, confused, that disappear quickly. They are different dreams, alive, clearly felt. You see him, recognize every detail, the way of walking, the look, the way he approaches, and the strongest of all, it's the feeling. It doesn't seem like a distant dream. It feels like a date. Many people describe it the same way. In dreams, there is no pain. There is no goodbye. There is no heavy feeling left over from the last day. It's as if, for a few minutes, everything returns to its natural state, as if he was fine, as if it were whole, as if he were at peace. And perhaps the most striking thing is that, when waking up, the emotion is not the same as that of a common dream. She stays. It remains in the body. Sometimes you wake up with tears, other times with a strange calm, almost comforting, as if you've received something you can't explain, and there is a detail that many people only realize later. These dreams tend to happen precisely in more sensitive moments, days when the longing became more intense, specific dates, moments when you thought about him most intensely, as if there was a silent bridge being created there, as if, when the mind slows down, the bond finds space to manifest itself in another way. Now, the fourth sign is even more curious, because it doesn't just involve you. It involves other beings around you, the behavior of other animals. If you have another dog, cat, or any other animal, you may have noticed something different. They stop. They look at a specific point in the house. They follow with their eyes something that you don't see. They react to an empty space, as if it weren't empty. Sometimes they suddenly become alert. Other times they approach a place where your dog used to stay, and stay there for a while, for no apparent reason, no visible stimulus. And this draws attention because animals perceive the world in a much more sensitive way than we do. They don't just depend on what they see. They feel, capture. They respond to energies, sounds, and presences that often go completely unnoticed by humans. It's not about creating something supernatural. It's about recognizing that their perception works on another frequency, And when this type of behavior appears after the loss of an animal that was part of the household, many people begin to question it. Are they reacting to something I can't perceive? Is there some kind of continuity that doesn't just depend on matter? These questions do not arise by chance. They arise from experience, of what is experienced, of what is felt, and not from what someone explained. If another animal in your home has ever reacted as if there was something there, something you couldn't see, what exactly could it be noticing? This is the point where everything starts to get deeper, because now it's not just you, it's not just memory, it's not just internal emotion. There are signals happening at different levels, in the environment, in dreams, in the surrounding behaviors, and, little by little, the idea that all this could just be a coincidence begins to lose strength. But along with that comes a conflict, because a part of you wants to believe, you want to find meaning, you want to feel like this bond isn't over, but another part tries to protect itself, try to rationalize, try to avoid going too far with this possibility, and this conflict is completely natural. Why accept that something can continue? Changes everything. It changes the way you view loss, change the way you interpret longing. It even changes the way you understand the love that existed there. And perhaps that's why the next signs are the hardest to ignore, because they don't just appear, they begin to directly touch the reality of your daily life in a way that becomes increasingly impossible to pretend it didn't happen. It is at this point in the journey that many people come into conflict with themselves, because up until now, we can still try to explain everything rationally. The sounds could be from the house. The feeling of presence can be longing. Dreams can be emotional memory. The behavior of other animals may be coincidental, but then the fifth sign happens. And he usually works in a different way because he directly touches the concrete routine of the house. Small changes in objects, places, or habits that seem to bear his mark. We're not talking about something exaggerated. Most of the time, it's something simple, subtle, but deeply familiar. It could be the water pot that, on impulse, you almost fill again. It could be the collar appearing in a place that seems to catch your eye precisely on that day when the longing felt even worse. It could be his little ball appearing under a piece of furniture after a long time, just when you were thinking about him. It could be a noise coming from the area where he used to sleep. It could be the door leaning in that way that reminds him of the path he took. It could even be that strange reflex of repeating an old routine and feeling like it didn't come from nowhere. What makes this so striking is not the object itself. It's the moment. It's the context. It's the feeling that it appeared when it needed to appear. As if something was trying to touch your attention without invading, without frightening, without force, just remembering, just saying, in a silent way, I still find ways to reach you. One person told something very simple, but impossible to forget. After her dog left, she couldn't move the corner where he slept for weeks. The blanket remained there. The pot remained in the same place. The house continued to function, but there was a part of it that had stopped in time. One day, after returning from a very difficult week, she sat on the living room floor and began to cry softly. It wasn't a cry of despair. It was that tired, almost silent cry of someone who tries to be strong on the outside, but inside, they still feel everything. When he looked up, he saw his little ball in the middle of the hallway. Not near the toy basket, not hidden in a corner. In the middle of the hallway, at a visible point. She said she stood there, looking, because she didn't remember taking it out. And the strongest thing was not the object. That's what she felt the moment she saw it. Not afraid. Don't shock. Presence. As if, for a second, the house had responded to her pain. As if that little sign said, I know you still feel. Maybe someone from the outside hears a story like this and thinks there is always a practical explanation. And it may even exist. But anyone who lives an experience like this knows that it's not all about the mechanism. Sometimes, what changes a person is not proving something. It's the exact moment it happens. Because it feels too intimate to be empty. It seems too aligned with your emotion to be just dry chance. And this is where the most difficult conflict arises. You want to welcome what you felt, but at the same time, you're afraid that you're inventing meaning to bear the pain. You're afraid you're seeing too much. You're afraid of appearing weak, too sensitive, or even confused. But there is a truth that almost no one talks about. Grief does not make a person weaker. It makes the person more perceptive. When a loved one passes away, especially a dog that was a part of your everyday, you begin to notice things that would previously have gone unnoticed. Not because he was stuck in the past, but because love left your attention trained to recognize that presence. And when a sign appears exactly on the day your heart needs it most, how much of a coincidence can it be? You may never be able to prove to someone else what you felt. Maybe you don't even need it, because some experiences are not enough to be explained out loud. They arrive to be recognized in silence. If something like this has ever happened to you, an object, a detail, a routine, a small event that seemed to carry the presence of your pet, tell us in the comments with your words. There are people who experience this and remain silent for fear of not being understood. But when one person shares, another realizes they are not alone. And it is precisely in this collective recognition that pain begins to take on a new meaning. But the next signs go even deeper, because they don't just run the house. They touch you from the inside as protection, as a response, as if the bond has found a new way to stay. After all this, there comes a time when the question changes. At first, the pain makes you ask, is he really gone? But after certain signs, that's no longer the question. It starts to get deeper, more intimate, harder to ignore, because the sixth sign does not appear as a sound, object, or dream. It appears as protection. It's when, in an emotionally heavy moment, you feel a calm that wasn't there before. A sudden peace, as if some presence had touched you without touching. As if, in the middle of a bad day, something silently said, I'm still here. This can happen when you are crying alone, when you are going through a difficult phase, when the longing comes strong, without warning. Suddenly, something changes. Your chest slows down, your thinking tones down. The environment remains the same, but within you, something rearranges itself. And the most curious thing is that this feeling does not seem empty. She seems familiar. Many people describe this as the same comfort they felt when the dog simply approached, lay down close, pressed their body against it, and looked in silence. Without solving anything, but improving everything. As if his presence had always had that power, and maybe it still does. Now pay close attention to the seventh sign, because it is often the most difficult to explain and the most impossible to forget. Coincidences that seem like answers. You think about him, and something happens right after. You talk about it, and find an unexpected sign. You live a particularly sensitive day, and, without looking, you come across an image, a memory, a detail, a situation that seems perfectly suited to that moment. It's not just a random memory. It's synchronicity, as if the bond finds little cracks in the ordinary world to remind you that it hasn't disappeared from your story. Maybe it's a pity, a time, a song, a scene, a similar dog appearing just when your emotion was most open. The detail itself may seem small to those who see it from the outside, but for those who live it, it arrives with a very specific emotional weight. Because it looks like an answer, it looks like a message, looks careful. And this is where the main revelation of this video starts to make sense. When a bond is true, it can change form without ceasing to exist. This is the phrase I want you to remember, because maybe that's exactly what so many people feel, but can't put into words. The body leaves, The routine breaks, the house changes, but the bond does not obey the rules of matter so easily. It continues in memory, in marks, in perception, in subtle presence. Continue in the love that was built every day. It continues in the way you still feel. And maybe the signs aren't there to prove something to the world. Maybe they exist to console the hearts of those who truly loved. If your dog already protected you in life, why would his soul stop trying to do that now? This is the part that transforms the pain the most. Because loss stops being just an end and also becomes an invisible continuity. And when you start to see it from that angle, even that silence in the house stops seeming completely empty. Because maybe, on some level, it was never truly empty. And that's why the end of this story is not absent. It's in the new meaning it reveals. Maybe now you understand better why certain things still move you so much. It's not just nostalgia. It's not just custom. It's not just the difficulty of accepting absence. Sometimes, what remains there is not just his memory. It's the bond. And deep bonds don't disappear the moment the eyes stop seeing. So I want to go back to the image from the beginning. That soft sound of pause around the house. That moment when you stop. Look around. And for a second, it feels like he's still there. Maybe this moment is not just a pain wanting to relive the past. Perhaps it is also a form of love, finding another way to remain. Because anyone who has experienced a true connection with a dog knows he wasn't just part of the routine, he was part of you. It was in the times of the day, in the corners of the house, in the silences, in the arrivals, in the difficult nights, in the phases when no one else understood what you were feeling. He was there. And when a presence like this touches our lives so deeply, perhaps it is not strange to think that something of it continues to reach us. Not in the same way, not the way it was before, but in a subtle way, spiritual, almost always silent. Maybe that's why the house looked different after he left. Not just because he's gone, but because a part of his love still seems to circulate in the places where you live together. What if what you call silence is actually a presence so delicate that only the heart can recognize it? That's the question that remains. And perhaps it stays precisely because some connections were not born to fit only in the visible world. If this video spoke to you in a profound way, write in the comments, "The bond continues." That's not just a sentence. It's a way of saying to yourself and to other people who also feel this pain, that the love experienced with a dog was not small, it was not temporary, and it does not necessarily end with goodbye. And if you felt in your heart that one of these signs has already happened to you, maybe that's enough for today. Not everything needs to be proven to be real within the soul. Sometimes you just need to remember, just feel it, just realize that that sound of pause, that once filled the house, perhaps still echoes within you not as an absence, but as a promise. A silent promise that true love was never just for one life.